Hi, so my name is Jeremiah. I'm just gonna share with you guys my journey on going from practically homeless to stability. And I was able to take my life from sleeping on my mom's couch to living in a rooming house, working at Burger King, making $8.50 an hour, making anywhere from $800 to maybe $1,000 a month, to within 2 years now making anywhere from $4,100 to $4,500 a month. And I live in a really nice apartment. And so I'm just gonna share with you guys how I went from point A to point B. So I moved to Atlanta for the first time back in 2016. I believe it might have been around the middle of 2016. And I was living with a friend, and I was working, at restaurants and, doing makeup at a hair salon. And I wasn't really making money. I had also been fired from jobs here and there, and staying with friends. And eventually it came to a head where nothing was working and I needed to move back home with my family around the earlier part of 2017. And I did, and I moved back home to Florida with my mom and my dad, and I kind of felt defeated. And so I just, after working odd jobs at home, they didn't really work out. And so I just kind of took a break and took a pause from working and, trying to figure everything out. I just kind of let the chips fall where they may. And I gave myself a break. Now, I did give myself nearly a year break of really doing nothing. Also because I kind of, after all of my efforts in becoming independent, with them not working the way that I wanted them to, I internally felt defeated, and I did lose the voice that I had. And in retrospect now is actually a blessing, because I now have found a new voice. And so the old voice did have to die. And when I felt encouraged and saved some money at a certain point living with my mom, I did go ahead and start reapplying and looking for employment in Jacksonville, Florida. And to my surprise, none of the jobs that I applied to gave me a callback. I applied to Walmart. I applied to, basically grocery stores, hotels, just really anywhere I could apply, I did. Fast food restaurants, and no one gave me a call back. I couldn't figure out why. And then, I had an idea of, hey, I want to move back to Atlanta. So apply there, because what I do know about Atlanta, even though the first time I moved here, I did lose a couple jobs or was fired or left, is that it is easier to get hired here because it's a bigger city, and stores need a lot of help. It's more bustling, so it's just always more opportunity here. And so here in Atlanta. And so I applied to the airport, and they literally called me back maybe the next day, or not called, but sent me an email saying, can I come in for an interview the next day? And I couldn't because I wasn't in town, and so I did miss that opportunity. But I applied to a Burger King. I applied to other places, but specifically I applied to a Burger King, and I called, and they did need help at that store, and the manager was gonna hire me on as a manager, but I didn't have management experience, so he said he could definitely work with me and get me trained to be a manager. And I told him I'm moving there, and so during that time I wasn't really getting along with my mom, so I didn't want to tell her of my plans of moving. I just kind of kept it to myself. I didn't tell my family. I didn't tell, really anyone except for some of my friends. And one of my girlfriends had a home here in Atlanta, and so I just kind of stayed with her for about a week or so while I was looking for a rooming house. And so I found a rooming house and moved in there and literally began working. And I know some people would not want to work at a Burger King or feel like that's beneath them, but my main focus was stability and just working a steady job. And I was willing to do whatever it took and work wherever I needed to work, and also climb my way up. And so, working there, I did have a manager that was kind of stealing out of my drawer. Well, not kind of, she stole out of my drawer. And, I didn't really know that was her thing until some of the other managers told me that she often does that. And then other things were happening at the store. So eventually I did look for other employment, and I had a conversation with one of the managers, and we both agreed that, I could go. I wanted to go, and he said that's fine. And I began working at Waffle House, and then I was looking for a second job, and I began working at Kroger. Burger King was paying $8.50 an hour, and the Waffle House job that I got, hosting at that Waffle House, that paid $9 an hour, and Kroger was also $9 an hour. Once I started working at Kroger, I learned that they had an overnight stocking position, and I said, well, can I work that? Because it had more hours, and it paid $10 an hour. So the store let me work that, and that was my main job. I worked a couple hours here and there at Waffle House, and eventually I left Waffle House because I wasn't being treated right there, and Kroger was paying my bills. I was getting 40 hours there, and so I just began working there, and I stayed there for a year. And I stayed at Kroger for a year, but actually 6 months into me living in that rooming house, the person that I was paying rent to, one day, it was very random, but he said that, oh, the city is taking my house, whatever that means. So everyone has to be out of here by Monday. Mind you, when he told me that, it was Friday. And I was like, and I actually already had paid him half the rent. Well, I think more than half. But by the time I was giving him the rest of what I owed him for rent, he was like, oh, keep that. Everybody has to be out by Monday. The city's taking the house back. And it of course kicked up a lot of panic in me at first, but I just Had to take a deep breath, and I was like, okay, let's calm down and let's think of what I can do, because I was like, I have to be to work tonight at Kroger. And I'm like, I can't move back home with my mom. Like, I can't do this again. You know what I mean? And so I thought to ask my girlfriend that lived here, that originally moved here with, the second time I moved to Atlanta. I was like, well, can I stay with you for, 2 weeks until my apartment is ready? Because also, a couple of weeks prior to him telling me that I had to be out, he actually had already kind of hinted that eventually he wouldn't be renting rooms anymore, because he would say things like, I'm gonna turn that room into a studio, so don't get too comfortable. He would say things like that. And so I then began looking for an apartment when he would say things like that, the landlord. Which was fine, because that was my plan all along, to look for an apartment and, be independent and stable. So it was fine. So I actually, during that time, I had an apartment, but it was in the hood, so it needed renovation. So it was gonna take a couple weeks before the apartment was to be ready. And so I was just kind of waiting and trying to, save money and things like that. And then he drops the bomb that I have to be out. And so I stayed with a girlfriend for 2 weeks. And luckily for me, and this is how God has continued to show up for me, the day that I was packing my things to move out of his place and to bring them to my girlfriend's house, MAC Cosmetics had gave me a call, and the manager, because I had gone maybe a couple days before, I had gone there asking if they had available hours for freelancers, because I'm a MAC artist freelancer. And they said that they would just give me a call when they do have available hours. And this was during the holidays. This is, I think, right before Christmas. And so she called me right as I was packing up the rest of my things in the middle of the day and said, hey, we have some hours for you. We have some shifts for you. Can you also come in today? I said yes. I dropped what I was doing and I went to work. And I was working full hours. I was actually working overtime at night, overnight at Kroger, stocking. And Mac had specific shifts, and they were full shifts. And so I was asking the manager, could we change some of the hours, that way I can have, in my head I was saying so that I can have time to rest. But I was just asking her to make it work because I had, another job. And she said no, the hours were what they were. It was holiday time, so they couldn't bend the hours during that time. But after holidays, they could work around my schedule. And so I just said, yes, I will work it. But here's the thing. My friend's house that I was staying in was an hour outside of, about an hour outside of Atlanta. And on the train and the bus, it actually took me 2.5 to 3 hours to get to Lenox Mall, which is not that far from downtown. It's not that far. And so because of the commute and the timing of my shifts from both jobs and the 3-hour, I guess, time frame it took to get from my girlfriend's house to Lenox during the day, when Mac and Kroger's hours overlapped, I actually did not have time to physically go to sleep. So, and I would work both jobs throughout the weekend at the same time. And so being that I didn't have literally any time to sleep, I would stay up for 3 to 4 days. Literally, just working one job, going home to shower, change, and brush my teeth, and then going to the other job. So work Kroger at night, sometimes picking up doing overtime, and then I would get off, travel all the way to my girlfriend's place, change, get shower, and also fix me something to eat because I had to eat. And then I literally only had a couple hours to be to work from there, because I would work from Mac from like when they open to almost when they close. So I was literally doing 8-9 hour shifts. And then I would also be doing 9 to 10 to 11 hour shifts at Kroger. And so I was going days without sleeping. And that's how hard I worked during that time. And the blessing was, after those 2 weeks of staying with my girlfriend, I got my checks, and I literally had just enough to move into my first apartment. And that's just how God shows up. And when you're open to doing the work, the blessings come right after. And some people would say, I wouldn't work that hard, I wouldn't do this, I wouldn't do that, blah, blah, blah. But what you have to understand is what you go through doesn't last forever. And I knew that how hard I was working was only temporary. Only temporary. And so it literally only, that level of working hard only lasted those 2 weeks. And I got into my apartment, and I was so blessed and so grateful for that. And so I continued working at Kroger and Mac. And then, things started not working out so well at Kroger. I was seeing a lot of good employees being treated pretty terribly. And the store was not run well, and there was just a lot that was happening, and I kind of got caught up in that too, with upper management writing those of us who were not managers, writing us up for things that fell on them, but they didn't want to take responsibility for not ordering products correctly, and wondering why the shelves are either why the shelves are empty, or why there's so much overflow in the stock rooms. There was just a lot that fell on the upper management of the store that they really tried their hardest to always blame on the non-management employees. And I'd actually called them out for it. I was like, you guys are writing me up several times. I'm noticing a pattern of being written up for, and not having a real explanation about why. And I noticed I was never written up again after that. I was always threatened, but I was never written up again after I had spoken up about the second time I had been written up for something that didn't fall on my shoulders. I was just doing the best I could. You know what I mean? And so when I was also threatened with a demotion, pay cut, I said that I throw my hands in the air. I am going to look for another job. And the night that the manager told me that I was gonna get a demotion, I had actually after he told me, I started watching this video on YouTube from Iyanla Vanzant, where she talks about the energy of money and also leaving one place of employment for a place of employment that will treat you with respect, will honor you, will appreciate you, and pay you your worth. I watched that video maybe 12 or 13 times, like literally. I played it back to back to back as I was working. And that morning, because I work overnight, that morning, I went and applied to Target, and I went and applied to Home Goods, and I applied to some other places. And I got dressed and I went downtown, and I updated my resume to include all of the things that I had learned from working at Kroger and stocking, and just the responsibilities that it takes to order things, and inventory, keep track of that. And I just wrote all that down, in a professional manner on my resume. And I took that and I went into Target, and I didn't really know how to find. I wanted to apply for a stocking position with Target, and I thought that they had that available. So when I went in, I didn't know how to find that on their website. So I asked one of the managers to kind of help me on my cell phone, kind of figure out how to get to where I was going. And she literally walked me step by step. And I was so scared to ask her because I felt stupid, and I felt like she could have done what people at some other places would do and be like, just basically kind of say you got to figure it out on your own, and not really want to help. And I wouldn't have continued bothering her. I would have left. But she was so sweet, and she literally answered every question I had, and basically went to the part to fill out the application for me because I just didn't understand how to get there. And I was like, well, can I speak to the hiring manager as well? And they said, sure, just go ahead and fill out the application. You can go upstairs to our Starbucks, and you can sit in there and fill out the application, and then we'll bring you down to talk to the hiring managers. And so I did. And they kept their word, and they brought me to their basement, and I didn't know who these people really were, but it was a couple different managers. Come to find out, I went in the room, and it's the head director of the store and all of the people who are literally right under her were in a room. And I walk in, and I didn't know who she was exactly. I just knew they were hiring managers, but the director of the store looked me up and down like this. Basically, like she liked me. And I was just telling them that, I work at Mac, and, and I also work at Kroger, and, I'm great with stocking, I'm great with working with people, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I'm applying for a stocking position. And the store director says, you know what, we actually just opened our new beauty section, and we were looking for a guy to help customers because we've never had a male work in that department. And being that you work at Mac, that's perfect. And you know how to stock because that's what you would be doing. And I said, oh wow, I was not even expecting that. And they were also paying $13 an hour. And they told me that eventually they'd be going up to $15 an hour. And I was like, wow, I'll be making that much? That's awesome. So I actually walked out feeling like I probably had the job. I was kind of sure. But I still follow my instincts, and I know that the only time is great to put all your eggs in one basket is when you're looking for a place of employment. Look for as many as you can. So I kept that idea so I could have multiple ways of possibility to receive income. And so I also applied to Home Goods, and I went inside Home Goods, and I asked to speak to the hiring manager, and I don't know if she didn't like me or whatever. I don't know if my breath was stank. I don't know why, but when I sat down and I was like, I applied online, and I wanted to hand you my resume in person, and I would love to work here. She was just like, "We're not hiring." I was like, "Oh, okay. Thank you." She's like, "Mm-hmm," and then she walked away. I was just like, "Whoa, okay." Because I knew someone who had actually just gotten hired there from my Kroger store. So I don't know if maybe they got hired and they made a bad impression on folks who work for Kroger, but she just was like, "We're not hiring." And I'm just like, "Well, y'all was just hiring people, but and I applied. All right." And then other places I called to try to work at, they were like grocery stores. They were like, it was like this lesser known store. They were like, "Oh, we are only hiring teenagers." I don't know, something. It's crazy. The things you go through when you're looking for jobs and the things people tell you. But anyway, I waited a couple weeks to hear from Target. I was calling back and forth to check on my status, and I was just so worried that they would not hire me because I've been rejected from jobs before, and they actually had like this new system of how they were hiring people within like their computer and things they were doing. So they were actually learning a new process of how they were supposed to like go through steps to hire people. So they were kind of behind. They were trying to figure out what they were supposed to be doing as well. So it made my process take longer than it should have. So I waited about 3.5 weeks before I learned that they were gonna hire me on. And I was just so excited and relieved and ecstatic. And I think right before they hired me, actually, MAC Cosmetics had promoted me to a permanent artist. And what permanent artist means is just that you have secured hours each week that's somewhat livable, because MAC pays so much. So working like if you're like a freelancer, you may not be making enough to pay your rent or your bills, but you're getting a lot of great experience, and then you're getting a check as well. But they promoted me to permanent position. So I was getting like 20 hours a week, which was awesome, because before then, as a freelancer, I was getting 16 hours a week, which was actually really, really great for MAC. And I actually work at one of the top counters in the country, which is MAC Macy's Lenox. And it was such a compliment to me that there was a time where there were no available hours for any freelancers throughout Georgia, and I want to say around the United States, but I'll just stick with Georgia because I can't remember. But that does happen. But I was the only freelancer working in Georgia for a couple weeks. thanks to my manager, who said I was making the store so much money that they basically, and they don't normally do this, but they basically set me at a specific amount of hours that I worked each week. And I did that consistently, and it was the 16 hours. And I wasn't a permanent artist, and usually only permanent artists have a set of hours like that available each week, you know, which was phenomenal, you know. But right before I got hired at Target, they had promoted me to a permanent artist, and I was now at 20 hours. While working at Target, you know, I think within the first 2 months, I was promoted to a trainer, to be a trainer of the beauty department, because I got in there and I learned how to do what I was supposed to do, and I did it, you know, I guess as fast as I could, but you know, I guess I had so much, you know, work experience of working fast, you know, working at Kroger and, you know, Burger King and Waffle House. I had a high level of work ethic and ability, and they saw that, and they made me a trainer, and they saw how well I also work with people. And it didn't come with a pay increase for that, but I was a trainer of my department, under my head manager of my department. And that was just such a compliment to me. They took a picture of me and put it on the wall where they have all the assistant trainers in different departments. And that was just such a compliment. And it reminded me of what Iyanla was saying. You work for a company that appreciates you and pays you your worth, and allows you to share the best of who you are. And that was also one of the reasons I applied to Target. And so, you know, fast forward some months, during the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, and so many stores were closing. You know, MAC Cosmetics did close down, and Target did remain open. And they've just really been taking care of me. It's just such a wonderful company to work for. You know, being that the public transportation has changed because of COVID. Some bus lines have been cut. And so one of the buses that picked me up right in front of my apartment was cut. So I had to walk 13 minutes, which was, I don't know how many blocks it was, but it was an annoying walk, you know, that I had to walk to the nearest bus, which wasn't terrible or bad, but, and I did it for a while. And then I found out that our store, Target, was allowing a certain amount of people to receive these free rides through Lyft. They were giving out codes to employees to receive rides from your home to Target, and you had up to 28 rides a month. And you know, so just things like that are amazing, you know. And I was just like, wow, this company is just awesome. And where some companies were treating their employees, you know, differently and not in a good way during COVID, Target has really stepped up to the plate, and it's just making my life so much easier. And the funny thing is, during this COVID situation, this has been some of the best moments in my life, and in part to literally just working for Target. And so the apartment that I was living in, it was a rundown apartment. I made it beautiful. I made it my own. You know, when I moved in, it had roaches and you know, I figured out how to get rid of them, you know, through certain things that I would buy, and it never had central air or heat, even though that was in my my lease. And I would go through summers literally in the heat. And during the pandemic, you know, I was making good money, and I did receive the $1,200 stimulus check, and I had bought my own air conditioner at that point, you know, and I was just working, and I, you know, decided I was like, why don't I just move? You know, I'm making enough money, I can afford better. Why don't I just move? And I was really nervous to do so, but I went ahead and followed my instinct, and I started looking for apartments. And my budget was $750 to about $800. I was really nervous to go anything above that, even though I could afford it. I just, my apartment that I was previously living in was $600 a month, so I didn't want to go too far above that, because I believe in living within your means and not living over. So I just was really trying to not go over, even though I kind of could. I just didn't want to step out like that. But I was looking for apartments, and I did a go see, and you know, I had to wait, and you know, I was trying to hurry up and move, and my phone was cracked, so in between, like it was like really messed up, and sometimes I couldn't even use it because it was so messed up. Like I was supposed to buy a new one, but because I was working so much and I was always tired, I never really made time to go and do that. And so being that the phone was messed up that I have, and wasn't really allowing me to do much on it, when I would get home from work, I couldn't call or really even look for very many apartments, because it was just so, like, the phone was fucked up. And the Friday that I set aside to look for another apartment, this is how God works. I was so tired, I felt I missed the time frame of me getting up to at least call around to say, hey, do you guys have an apartment available now? You know, I was gonna do that, but I had overslept because I had a time frame. And so and I also told one of my girlfriends to meet me, and we were supposed to go out and look for apartments and everything. But I slept through to about 1 in the afternoon, and my girlfriend, who was supposed to pick me up earlier that morning, and we were supposed to look for apartments and stuff, she showed up to my house at 1 in the afternoon, and she knocked on my door and called, and I was about to ignore her call, but I picked up, and she was like, I'm outside. She was like, thank God you answered, because if you wouldn't have answered, I'd have went home. But I answered, she came in. I was gonna say, well, girl, let's just not worry about it. It's late in the afternoon, it's 1 p.m. You know, I need to get in the shower, and you know, then we have to look for an apartment. We're probably only gonna be able to look at one because they close around 5, and it's gonna be traffic, and you know, I had all this running through my head, but I said, you know what? I know how spirit works, and when things are kind of moving along for you, you just really gotta have to go with it. You know what I mean? And she showed up, and I'm up, and we still got time. So I said, go with it. So I said, girl, let me hop in the shower, and when I get out the shower, I'll try to use my phone to call some places. My phone was still acting fucked up, so I actually used her cell phone, and I called many apartment complexes, and 2 of them said that they were only allowing people to move in that were of the age of 55, and you know, and because I'm calling within my price range. And sometimes when you are looking for an apartment in the $700, $750, $800 price range, those sometimes they can be considered sort of low end or low income. So some of them have restrictions and rules and stuff like that. So and then one place I called and they were like, oh, we just leased our last 1-bedroom apartment this morning. And I was like, oh shit. What? I was like, oh my gosh. So I said, let me call this last place. And this place was out of my budget, because my budget was like $750 to $800, maybe even $900, because I was getting desperate. But I saw this apartment and it was $1,035. I said, well, I make about $2,000 a month, or a little over $2,000. So I said, it's a stretch. It's way out of my budget. But I said, I think I can do it. Let's just call and see. So I called. The lady was so nice. The apartment manager was so nice. And she was like, well, we close it, I think she said 5:30 or 6:30, something like that. And she was like, you know, sure, you can come look at an apartment today. And yes, we do have a 1-bedroom available. And she said that I could apply, and there is, you know, they were doing a deal for when you apply to save money and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, well, we'll be there, you know, shortly. And me and my girlfriend hopped in a car and we came over and looked at the apartment, and it was amazing. And, you know, I asked how long it would take when doing the background check for them to let me know if I'm approved. And they said it would be 24 to 48 hours. And I said, okay, well, I'm ready to apply now. And I applied, and basically they approved me right after I applied. And because I was actually nervous that I was gonna have to wait those 2 days and they were gonna say that you're not approved. But they literally, and this is how God works, they literally approved me, verbally they approved me right after I applied. They basically, you know, let me know that they were gonna send me the welcome letter, and they just let me know how much it was to move in, and they let me know that it'd only be a week. I'd have to wait, or it was like actually less than a week. I'd have to wait to be able to get my keys, and so yeah, and I was nervous because I don't have a very long rental history, and I've been denied for apartments before. And so all that was running through my head, and it's just like God just came in and you know, showed his grace. And right before I moved in, Target let me know that me and everyone in the store was gonna have a mandatory 35 hours a week to work. Because before then, during COVID, we were working we had like 12 hours and stuff on our schedule. But of course I would still like work about 40 hours just because they always needed help. So they literally like called me every day that I was off. Hey, can you come in today? Hey, can you come in today? And I always say yes. So I was always working like 35 to 40 hours, but my schedule would have like 12 and 25, you know, hours on it. And I was nervous to move in this apartment just because I was like, I don't really have, even though I am working 35 and 40 hours already, being that I have a schedule that says 12 hours, that doesn't make me feel very secure. But I went ahead and still took the leap. And after I was approved for the apartment, Target said, hey, everyone in the store is actually gonna now start working a mandatory 35 hours. And then I think right when I got my keys to my apartment, And then Max said, hey, we're opening back up. And they had let go of so many of my old coworkers, and I was really sad about that. And they said that not only are we opening back up, but we're gonna offer you a promotion at 30 hours. And that was just nothing but God. You know, they offered me a position to move into management, which would be like 30 to 37 hours. And also, I forgot to tell you guys, when I took my promotion with Mac, I was then earning $17.50. So, because I've been making $15 an hour with Mac since I've been with the company, but when I got my promotion to 20 hours, I was then making $17.50. So now fast forward, me moving into this apartment, they're saying we're gonna offer you 30 to 37 hours. That was amazing. But I actually renegotiated, and you know, now I'm doing part-time instead of full-time, which is at 30 hours, 28 to 30 hours. That way I can work both jobs. And so now per month, I'll be on an average earning about 41 to possibly like 4,500. When I first moved here, I was, you know, making under $1,000 a month. And within 2 years to do that, for me is amazing and nothing but God, because I meet people every day who have been making $9 to like $11 like for the past 10 years. You know what I mean? So I really had a goal to be stable, and I'm there. I am there. And so I just really wanted to share that story. So if you're wondering how to kind of get to stability, you have to be willing to do the work. And work hard, but also know when to elevate. But also be willing to work to humble yourself to take those jobs that some people would be embarrassed to work. You know, I literally had a friend who was at one point homeless as well, and she told me I wouldn't work at Waffle House because I wouldn't want people to know that I work there, or someone I know to walk in and see me. And I was just like, well, I just really felt bad for her, because she was allowing the judgments of others to stunt her growth to stability. And I didn't care. And so often I talk to people who are homeless, are, you know, needing work, or trying to up level their lives, are trying to get to the next step, and they are so choosy. You know, I'll be like, well, why don't you apply to work here or work there? They're like, oh, I'm not gonna work there. I'm not gonna do work like that. Or, you know, people that I know in my life who are always moving from place to place because they move in these expensive apartments that they can't afford, or houses that they can't afford, and then they move every 6 months or every year because they're not moving because they want to, because they're being evicted. And I'm like, well, why don't you move into something that you can afford? And they're like, I'm not living in the hood. I'm not, you know, doing that, you know. And it's like, you have to live within your means, and you have to do what you have to do to make it to the next step. And so many people are so choosy and not humble, and not willing to do the work that needs to be done to get from point A to point B. And so sometimes that's what makes me not feel sorry for people who are in certain kind of predicaments when it comes to being homeless, or you know, are living in lack, because a lot of it really falls on them. And you just have to be open. And so I just wanted to share that story with you guys. And thank you so much for tuning in. Deuces.